Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. Welcome to Casual Sunday. I am your minister, the Reverend John Cullinan. As Unitarian Universalists, we prefer... I've lost all my words this morning. This will be a fun hour. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people and gather together in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are right now, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome into this community. And now, take a moment to breathe deeply. Close your eyes. Feel the Spirit settle in you. Feel the earth keeping you grounded. Breathe in deeply and breathe out. And let us begin. Welcome, you who come in need of healing, you who are confused or have been betrayed. Welcome with your problems and your pain. Welcome to your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need to hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here you may find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, you may find community for your struggles. People with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and the changes of our day. Come, let us worship together on this beautiful morning. Please rise in body or spirit and join in our opening hymn, number 209. Please remain standing and join in our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. Please be seated. candle has been lit this morning in honor of memories of Chuck Forrest shared yesterday by many members of the community. I light these candles for all our joys and all our sorrows. Held quietly in our hearts. As well this morning, I must light a candle of life today. Our beloved member Ann Beyer passed away yesterday afternoon, not long after we finished the memorial for Chuck. She had been in the ICU for a couple of days, declining rapidly. We have still not been in touch with her family at this point, so I have no news on memorial services yet. I know there will be one, and we will keep you updated as that comes into play. But as is our tradition, I light our candle of life and I ask for a moment of silence for Ann Beyer. Please join me now in a moment of prayer and reflection. Eternal and beloved, gracious source of all life and all love, we come together this morning grateful for this time out of time, which we have set apart so that we might become more fully present to ourselves, to each other, to that which we call holy. May our joys be celebrated together, our wounds be healed together, our hearts be opened together. Spirit, in this time of uncertainty, of fear and angst, our nation holds its collective breath. In this time when rhetoric blusters about and words are used as weapons, our nation clenches its fists, tightens its shoulders, eyes squeezed shut. Some are preparing for a fight. May we remember we are a people of resilience. We have faced uncertainty before. We have weathered storms. We have been consumed by flames. We have risen like the phoenix from the ashes. And we will again, we the people. May we remember our shared humanity, our universal kinship, our interdependence, as we unclench our fists and breathe together, breathing in love and breathing out peace. May we recognize the spark of the divine inside all of us, even those we are not quite sure about. In this time of uncertainty, we remember the good will go on as we work to move forward together. We the people, seeking that which unites us, with our arms reaching out wide for life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. May love prevail. All this we pray in the names of those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten. in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Amen.
Am I on? I'm on now. Well, if the young and young at heart want to come forward for a story for all ages, y'all are welcome to come forward. Have a story about playing fair. Ooh, Wonder Woman is here today. Yes. Awesome. How many of you like to play fair? Raise your hand. Yeah, I like playing fair, right? Mostly, yeah, okay. Yeah, so this is a story about playing fair. It was a warm summer evening, like, right now, in that glorious time between supper being over and having to get ready for bed, when the fireflies start to appear one by one. 3 children went outside to play. "But what should we play?" asked Tabitha, who was the oldest of them all by 4 months and 2 days. She had bright, shiny braces and beads braided into her hair. "Let's play tag," said Alex, who was the next oldest by 2 months and 15 days. He always wore his baseball hat sideways, and he always wore his t-shirt tucked in. "Let's play hide and seek," said Sheena, who was the youngest of the 3. She had 3 braids in her long, dark hair, 2 little braids in front on either side of her face, and 1 bigger braid that hung down her back. "Tag," said Alex. "Hide and seek," said Sheena. "Tag, hide and seek, tag, hide and seek." "Stop it," said Tabitha, stomping her foot, crossing her arms. "Let's vote." Sheena looked at Alex, and Alex looked at Sheena, and they both said, "Okay, we can have secret ballots and everything," said Tabitha. She ran inside her house and then brought back paper and pencils and a shoebox with a skinny hole cut in the top. Sheena took her piece of paper and wrote "hide and seek" in neat and careful letters. Then she folded her paper and put it through the skinny hole into the box. Alex and Tabitha were already done. "Right now we count them," said Tabitha, and she took off the lid of the box and unfolded each paper. "Tag, hide and seek, tag. It's 2-1. Tag wins." "Okay," said Sheena, and the 3 of them played tag until their parents called them inside to get ready for bed. The next night, Tabitha brought the shoebox, and they voted again. "It's 2-1, announced Tabitha. "Tag wins." Sheena sighed. Okay. Tag won the next night, too. And the night after that, and the night after that. It's not fair, Sheena said. But we voted on it, Alex replied. And that was true. And besides, they lived in a democratic country, and in a democracy, voting was the way to decide. It's still not fair, Sheena muttered. And so the next night, when Tag won again, she decided not to play. Oh, come on, said Tabitha. Tag isn't fun with only 2 people. Tag isn't fun at all, Sheena said darkly. I'm tired of playing tag. I quit. Tabitha looked at Alex, and Alex looked at Tabitha, and then they both looked at Sheena, who wouldn't look at either of them. Tabitha jingled the beads braided into her hair. Alex turned his baseball hat so it pointed the other way. Then Alex said, well, maybe instead of voting all the time, we could take turns. Sheena looked up. Take turns? Yeah, 2 nights playing tag because there are 2 of us who like to play it. Then 1 night playing hide and seek because there's 1 of you. We could start tonight, said Tabitha. We could even play hide and seek for a couple of nights in a row because we haven't played it yet at all. How does that sound, Sheena? That sounds great, Sheena said. I'm going to hide. Me too, said Alex. That means you're it, Tabitha. And he and Sheena ran off to hide while Tabitha closed her eyes and counted, sometimes slow and sometimes a little too fast. When she got to 100, she yelled, "Ready or not, here I come!" And on that warm summer evening, in the glorious time between supper being over and having to get ready for bed, as the fireflies appeared one by one, the 3 children played outside until their parents called them home. And that is our story today about playing fair. And you are welcome to grab some coloring sheets on our intention table and color during the service and John's message, which will go along with this little story. So thank you for coming up, everybody. And remember to play fair.
And so it came to pass that one day, maybe just a few months from now, Jesus did in fact return as promised. And he made a big show of it too, just to make sure that there was no doubt about what was going on. He descended from a big glowing cloud from the heavens down into the middle of Times Square, where at least one network would catch it outside its morning show windows, and people would be there to stream it as it happened. And even with the big show, still some people doubted, because people are people. So much so that eventually the Holy Spirit arrived to pull a John the Baptist and say, no, yep, this is the guy, this is him. And then all doubt was cast away, or at least most doubt was cast away, and the remaining doubters kept quiet so they would not be stared at. And then the requests for the interviews began. Everybody wanted to grill Jesus about what he was doing here now and what he had really meant when he said blah, blah, blah. Invitations from world leaders mounted up, but Jesus was having none of it. He was having meals in diners with the beat cops and the prostitutes and the homeless and the thieves, as he always did. And everybody looked and said, man, that's weird. Finally, realizing that mass media is what it was and that he could get to a lot more people at a time, he decided to throw an event that would have a large audience in the room and be broadcast on television. And so one night, he met with the throngs at Radio City Music Hall. And he took people's questions without cease. Now, most of the questions were along the lines of, why didn't you give me the job spouse money that I asked you for? Or why didn't you save my dog, hamster, Aunt Gladys from certain death? And he very patiently and very compassionately answered each one until hopefully the point had been driven home that that's not how this prayer thing works. And he continued to be asked questions of various depth or shallowness. And we had almost come to the end of the night. The questions had petered out and people were getting tired when Jesus noticed one particular man standing at a microphone at the front of the second mezzanine. He had been waiting a long time. And though the distance was great, Jesus could sense the anger emanating from this man. And he said, last question then, you, sir, up in the mezzanine. And the man said, Master, I have been a good and devout Christian all my life. I have done everything you have ever asked me to do. I have kicked the gay teachers out of my school. I have refused to serve them in my business. I have voted for all the candidates that you have anointed to bring your kingdom here on earth. I have served you well, and yet I have been relegated to near the back row instead of in the front at your feet where I belong. Why, Master, why? And never one to turn down a good chance for a parable, Jesus started a story. There was a person, because he was down to the gender neutral, there was a person who decided they would throw a giant ice cream party for everyone who was in their group of beloveds. He had just been introduced to ice cream the night before and was a little obsessed. And so the day came, and all of his beloveds arrived at the 31 flavors. And he offered them all the ice cream they could eat, with the containers miraculously refilling themselves as they went along. Whatever flavor they wanted, whatever was their favorite, it was there, and it was available to them. And everybody had a wonderful time together. And the space seemed to grow as more and more beloveds arrived. And there was, amidst this group of beloveds, a Pharisee. Do you still have those? No? Okay, there was among this group a pedantic killjoy. And this gentleman loved him some vanilla ice cream. It was his favorite flavor. Now, let me tell you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with loving vanilla and having it as your favorite flavor. It is very good, especially when it is very well made, like this stuff. However, the killjoy loved vanilla so much and so strongly that he did not understand why anybody else in the room could possibly want any other flavor. And that lack of understanding led pretty directly into disgust. The fact that anybody else would want something besides vanilla was disgusting and needed to be removed from his sight. And after several minutes of watching this orgy of 31 plus flavors, he jumped on top of a table and he started to preach a sermon in the midst of the ice cream party about the joys of vanilla and the truth that lay in it, and how it was the one true flavor, and everybody needed to come to him. And nobody listened. Nobody cared, because they liked the flavors they liked, and it brought them joy, and it brought them together. So he went to the host of the party and said, "We've got to put an end to this. We've got to just start serving vanilla to everybody." And the person said, that's not how this works. See, I love my family, all of this family. I love my beloveds, and I want them to enjoy the ice cream that suits them. And so in a last-ditch effort, the man went to the owner of the ice cream shop and said, "Look, isn't it a struggle to have to make so many flavors every day? To have to decide every day which ones you are going to feature? To have so many options in front of you and that much choice and that many things that could go wrong in a given day?" Vanilla, my good man, is the purest of the flavors. It is the original flavor of ice cream. Why not make it the only one? It's so good here that the customers won't mind. They'll love it no matter what. And after all, who are they to tell you what kind of flavors they want? You're the expert, right? And the owner succumbed to the flattery, and soon enough, as ice cream disappeared, it started getting replaced with more and more vanilla, until at last all there was vanilla ice cream and the 31 flavors. And some people decided that, yeah, this is a pretty good vanilla overall, and they stuck around to continue eating it, and others got a little disgruntled about not being to have things the way they desired, because that was what was promised, and so they left. And the person who just wanted to bring happiness to his beloveds flipped over a few tables and went out to go find them again. "Now I ask you," says Jesus to the man in the mezzanine, "was the killjoy right in doing what he did?" "Oh no," said the man. "I mean, there has to be at least chocolate there too, right?" "Yet," said Jesus, "I offered you a menu with a wide variety of ways to serve the coming of the kingdom. Have dinner with a sinner. Care for the poor and the sick and the incarcerated. Love God with all your heart and soul and strength, and your neighbor as yourself." There were some options there, and you chose something way off the menu. You chose to take the work and turn it into hate, into oppression, into domination. And none of this serves the building of the kingdom. None of this serves the larger purpose that I was trying to get you to buy into. So you see, when you stomp out others' light, the heck did I write there? When you blacken their windows, their view onto the world, onto the kingdom, you are not carrying out the great mission. Verily I say unto you, you're just taking a giant dump all over everybody else's ice cream party. And the man left the hall unsatisfied and went and got himself booked on the next evening's Tucker Carlson so he could complain about this woke Jesus and his virtue signaling. Here endeth the lesson. Been a lot of ruined ice cream parties in the last few weeks. On top of us all still reeling from the overturning of Roe v. Wade and wondering what is going to happen next and what it means for all of us in the future, it should not go unnoticed that the Supreme Court also opened the door to prayer in public schools again. Open the door to public education funding going to private religious schools. These are big wins for the One True Flavor set. And you might ask, how did the court pull this off? Because isn't all of this pretty much counter to the First Amendment? And you would be right to ask the question. You would think yes. But the history of how the court has dealt specifically with the freedom of religion in the First Amendment has a long, windy history, and not always a good one. The First Amendment has two things to say on the topic of religion in this nation. One, Congress will not pass any law that establishes one religion in the community. It shall not establish religion at all. And two, the free exercise of people's religion shall not be infringed. Shall not establish, shall not infringe free exercise. For a long time, the non-establishment clause was the one that had priority. There was, in the early part of the 20th century, a test that judges would put towards cases around religious matters that was called the Sherbert test, after Sherbert v. Werner. And the test said simply this: people's free exercise of religion must be granted strict scrutiny when being considered by the courts. In other words, if you're going to pass a law that infringes on somebody's free exercise, you better have a really good reason for the good of the wider community in order to do that. And that was how things ran until just a few decades ago. But then in 1990, the court kind of backhandedly overturned that strict scrutiny rule. In 1990, a couple of native employees of a state institution, and I forget the state right now, so I apologize, were laid off from their jobs. And they went to go file for unemployment. But it turned out that in their religious ceremonies, they used peyote and were denied their unemployment because they were drug users. And they sued the state over that. And the court sided with the state. They said this free exercise of their religion is definitely limited at this point. The state has a bigger case here, and that's how we're going to do things now. Now, there was a lot of anger across the partisan spectrum over this decision, and so in a bipartisan effort, one of those rare moments, Congress passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which essentially said, we are telling you, the court, right now that strict scrutiny about people's free exercise must be the rule you follow in all cases, no exceptions. In general, on paper, it's a good idea. People's free exercise should not be able to be limited so easily. And when you think about it in terms of people from minority religions speaking up and standing up for their free exercise, it makes a lot of sense. But when the majority religion in the country gets its hands on it, it turns into a weapon. It becomes a weapon in their hands. It becomes a way for people to impose their dogma on the secular laws of the state. And that's what brought us the Hobby Lobby case, where the court determined that a corporation was as entitled to the free exercise of their religious outlook as a person was, and that they could then come up with their own way of granting health care to their employees that if it didn't agree with what the standards were set at the time. And that led almost directly into Jack Phillips and the Masterpiece Cake Shop case, where a man who owned a cake shop refused to make a cake for a gay wedding because it was against his religion. And the court sided with him too, that your religious free exercise could be used to deny service to other people. And in this manner, the court kind of backhandedly, kind of by the via negativa, starts establishing religion. Now, they don't outright say this is for Christians. They don't put a name to the religion, but it's pretty easy to read the loud part and what they're quietly trying to say. Interestingly enough, Elie Mystal, the legal correspondent and commentator for MSNBC, in his recent book, Allow Me to Retort, A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution, writes that Phillips would have had a very good case on just a free speech grounds. He could have argued very easily that he was exercising his right of free speech in that moment, and he probably would have won on those grounds, but he was being sponsored by conservative religious groups, and that didn't fit their purposes. And so they went this route, and they took a risk, and they won. And so here we are. We might be wondering today, but what about my rights? What about our exercise of religious freedom? The downhill slide of the effects of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act turned the defense of people's free exercise in the hands of the courts into an unbounded right, one without limits. And here's the thing. I've preached this before from up here, and I'll preach it again. There is no right that exists in human hands that does not come with some kind of a natural limit to it. And the story goes like this from my good old high school civics teacher. My right to extend my fist ends right before it gets to your nose. There is a limit. And with those rights then, because of those limits, there come responsibilities to use it wisely and safely, and even some obligations to participate in the rights that are given to you, democracy. In an ideal world, the laws we pass, some of them are dedicated to carving out and defining what those limits might be, because we are all too human to self-regulate in a crunch. Somebody needs to say, this is the line. And in an ideal world, the courts act as mediators when two conflicting rights come up against each other. When there is tension, they're there to resolve it as best they can, to set the flow of the boundaries between those rights. But right now, in the case of free exercise of religion, the courts are in the business of picking a winner and a loser. Two people make a claim to a certain right, and they say, you have this right, and you do not. I grant you your freedom. I deny you yours in this case. But what if the courts were operating from the ideal? What if the courts were mediators? What would that look like? We don't have to imagine too hard. Jamal Green, in his recent book, Where Rights Went Wrong, describes this following story. In 1975, the government of West Germany was going through its own contentious case over abortion rights at the same time that we were studying Roe, arguing over that. Their constitutional court had taken up a case because the government of West Germany had passed a law decriminalizing all abortion. Abortion had been absolutely criminalized in West Germany up until this point, no exceptions whatsoever. Now, on the grounds that the courts had already established that a fetus has a right to life years and years before, they were not ready to overturn that yet. And so they struck the law down just based on that. But they didn't stop there. They didn't stop at the point of they win and you lose. They acknowledged instead that the rights that the government were arguing for in terms of autonomy for women were also extant. Both of these rights were real, they said, and they handed a directive back to the lawmakers of the country to say, when you are legislating on the topic of abortion, you must do it from a platform that says both of these are true and work it out between them. Allow the right as much as you can, while limiting infringement as much as you can, which is a tall order. But they took the order of the court seriously. And what they wound up with was a law that said abortion was decriminalized through the first trimester and under other certain circumstances that we will delineate here, rape, incest, and whatnot. Still very limited. And at the same time, if we are going to legislate on this topic, if we're going to create a law that still may force some people to carry a baby to term, the state must provide prenatal care and child care and employment guarantees that made child rearing less of a struggle for someone. Not necessarily a perfect resolution, maybe in our eyes. But over the years, the topic of abortion in Germany has come much less and less contentious. There are still people on either side advocating one way or the other. But in the upshot, there's no more apocalyptic fighting over the topic. And access has become easier and easier over time. What happened was the German court got literally political. And I say political because politics in their purest form is simply the art of finding ways to build a community out of all of our differences that are just there and exist. The art of the possible. It is the art of finding the unity in all of our diversity. which is why it drives me crazy when people say they don't like it when things get too political, because everything's political. It's how we negotiate living together day after day. What people are really decrying is when things get too partisan, and I'm right there with you. Mediating between and among the rights that we all claim when they come into conflict is the whole purpose of a political process. To accommodate a right as much as possible while infringing upon another's as little as you can. That is the whole point. And that's where we're falling down right now. And where does this leave us? And the courts have a whole lot of power in this country, and we are a tiny congregation in an isolated area. What exactly can we do about it? We can continue to keep pushing against the boundaries that are set, no matter how arbitrarily they are set. Push against the bounds that we know in our hearts probably don't jibe with what the Constitution is promising us. We can continue to exercise the right of our own free exercise of our religion in spite of where a court might draw the boundary, in spite of it perhaps carving us completely out of the question. We can be a complete nuisance in service of the right to free conscience. It's already happening in this country. You've probably seen several times over social media over the last couple of weeks the Jewish stance on abortion and where they believe life begins and how they are feeling impeded upon by the current decision. And in Palm Beach County in Florida, the synagogue congregation Lador Vador has filed a lawsuit against the state of Florida, protesting the 15-week ban, specifically because it is an infringement upon the free exercise of their religion, as it is stated. Also, oops. In other words, they are making a literal federal case out of the issue. And this, in my opinion at least, this is what is on the horizon for those of us who don't necessarily fall into the outlook of a majority religion. No one is going to speak up for the right of our free exercise if we don't do it first. So we need to push at those boundaries. We need to stake a claim within that right of free exercise before it is cut off completely. So like the synagogue in Florida, we need to be doing the work to force the issue wherever we can, bit by bit, forcing the issue so that courts have to consider someone else's right to free exercise in the context of everybody else's right to free exercise. We need to force them to consider mediation because they've set up their doctrine and the Religious Freedom Restoration Act has given them their directive. Make them look at it from another religion's perspective. And that way, I think we either force the theocrats of the world, who have a lot of power right now, it seems, force the theocrats to say the quiet part loud, finally, that we are trying to establish a religion as quietly as we can. Or we force the mediation of the rights so that we can get those boundaries shifted, limit the right of someone else to just before the point where it infringes upon our own. And I'll be honest, there are plenty of theocratic tendencies right here in our own community. We've seen it play out in school boards. We've seen it play out in the county council. There are loud voices that want their beliefs recognized as being more privileged than others and codified into the way that the county does its business and the school carries out its mission here in our community. What we do now is be present and be vocal. Speak up for our rights, our free exercise, our beliefs as we carry them out in the community. Nobody's going to do it for us. The more vocal we are, the more people will begin to understand that there are other people's freedoms at stake here. Write letters to the editor. Shout down the blowhards. Be a nuisance in service of a broader interpretation of free exercise, in service of a community made up of 31 and more flavors. I much prefer an ice cream party to a theocracy. How about you? May it be so. As we prepare to return to our everyday lives, it is time to give something of the gifts of this congregation back to the larger community we are part of. It is time for our offering. During the month of July, all cash and undesignated funds we collect will be given to our friends at the Los Alamos Family Council in support of their work on improving mental health in our community. You may give in the basket that is about to be passed around. You can give through the Givelify app if you prefer to give by a credit card, or you can, I was going to say leave money in the box in the back, but it's not there. So no, you can't do that today. Oh, wait, no, it's right there. Oh, okay. In the corner, over there, not over there. The offering will now be accepted. May what you give bring you joy and a deeper relationship with this community. Just a few announcements before we go. First up, we are still planning on having our information booth at the county fair on August 13th. That's a Saturday. It'll run from about 10 to 3, 9 to 3, I believe, and I will need some help staffing that throughout the day because that's a long haul. I will be sending up a sign-up form online for you to fill in, so you can go straight to that instead of me trying to remember things you tell me on Sunday, because that almost never happens. And finally, we will be offering, once again, for the first time in a while, our Introduction to Unitarian Universalism class on August 14th. It'll be a chance for you to learn a bit about what Unitarian Universalism is and where we come from and the places you might fit in there to answer all your questions. So if you're interested in that, please join us after the service on that Sunday for an Introduction to Unitarian Universalism. And now would you all please rise in body or spirit and join, there we go, in our closing hymn, number 121. Friends, may life bless us and keep us. May the light of light shine upon us and out from within us and be gracious to us and bring us peace. For this is the day. This is the one wild and precious life we have been given. So let us all find a way to rejoice and be glad in it. Go in peace.